Your gateway account can be configured to have as many users as you need. The account we're looking at now has 2 user accounts, and from the user accounts page, we can add a new user, and we get an overview of what permissions each of these users have. As you can see, there's quite a few under this second user here, and this first one has much more limited permissions. Each letter refers to one permission that they have, but to get a better look at this, let's take a look at the user permissions for this user with more limited access. From here, I can see the information for the user and edit any of these fields besides the username. I can resend the user welcome email, so if this user forgets their password and needs to get back into their account, you will be able to click this, and that'll resend an email to their email address on file with a link that they can click to reset their password. Going down a little bit further, we see the permissions, and this is the meat of the page. This is where you can have incredibly fine-grained control over what this user has access to and what they can do in the control panel and other aspects of the gateway. So right now, this user has access to the virtual terminal, processors, and transaction reports. Everything else is unchecked. So if you try to use this username and password to use the API, it won't be allowed because they don't have permissions to that. Same with mobile payments, QuickBooks, Swipe, and batch access. It won't allow them to use any of those. Additionally, they don't have access to services such as recurring, the product manager administration, or administrative options. This permission right here is probably the biggest one that you'll want to make sure you have correct for every user, as this is the setting that lets users go to the settings page in the first place and access information such as the user account page. So if you don't want a user to be able to edit their own permissions, you want to make sure this setting is turned off. If we look at the permissions table here, we have virtual terminal access and it's checked. If there's a checkbox and the field is collapsed, that means they have access to everything underneath it. So if I start expanding, I can see there's virtual terminal, credit card, and then I can choose which transaction types the user has permissions to. This is incredibly fine-grained control, and you may not need to go into every gritty detail here, but the option is here if you want this user to only be allowed in the virtual terminal to run sales, you can do that. And if I turn off electronic check as well, when this user signs in, they'll only be able to access the credit card menu and run sale transactions. The other ones won't be available to them. The same holds true for API access, where I can expand these and see which types of transactions I want this user account to be able to process API transactions with. iProcess as well, QuickBooks, Swipe, and Batch are similar. The processors will show any credit card or electronic check processors you have on your account. This account has 2 of each. If your account only has one payment processor, this won't show up. Every user will have access to that processor. Going down here, there's more features. You can turn those on or off. Like I said, the administrative options is the option that allows access to the settings menu and ability to change gateway settings. So you want to make sure only people who should be able to do that can do that. And going further down, you have notifications. So these are all email notifications, and you can choose which ones to receive. The primary user on the account has almost all of these turned on by default, with the exception of receive transaction receipts. This is an email notification that will send you an email, whatever email you have entered up here, whenever a transaction is approved. Some people like this, but if your transaction volume is very high, this may be more than you need. Other notable ones on here are upload summaries. So when you use the batch upload feature, if you want to receive an email that tells you a summary of what happened in the batch, you can turn that on. Settlement summaries are when your credit card transactions settle at the end of the day. You can receive an email once that's complete. Recurring reports is every time recurring runs, which is early in the morning every day. You can get an email with a summary of what happened with your recurring, and so on and so forth. Once you're ready, you can hit save, and those settings are changed. If you ever want to delete a user, you can go into their username and hit this button up here to delete user. We'll let you confirm it first, and when you hit OK, that user will be completely removed, and they will no longer be able to access the gateway with that username and password.